Hey, how's it going? Carson means today we're going to be talking about NFL Week 7 score predictions. We're going to go through every game, and I am going to talk about them. Then I am going to reveal the scores that I have and who I think will win. And also, I will have one lock of the week, and that may not necessarily be like the biggest blowout that I'm predicting, but it'll be the game that I am most sure that I'm picking correctly. It'll be the game that if there is an upset, I will be really, really surprised. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first game we're talking about is, of course, Thursday night football between the Eagles and the Giants. The Eagles, they are coming in this one without Miles Sanders, without Alshon Jeffrey, and after a pretty rough loss to the Ravens. I know the score looked close, but really they scored 22 points in the fourth quarter. Up until that point, they'd only scored 6 points. They actually got shut out in the first half. So not a very good game from the Eagles. They really played only one good quarter of football, which does count for something. It does definitely boost them up on, how I think of them. Like, if they can play like that consistently, they'd definitely be a force. But a good thing for them is that they're going up against the Giants, who they managed to beat Washington last week, but that isn't really saying much. Washington, it's basically a dumpster fire right now. It's really crazy to think that these two teams are, still in the brink of things right now. But right now, the Eagles are this division is so bad. But the thing that the Giants and the Eagles are still battling out for this division is crazy. Really, to think that any of these teams is still battling out for the division at this point is crazy. But that's how it is. The Giants, really, they haven't been playing very well. Daniel Jones has been having a pretty bad year, and also, I know I keep on talking about the Saquon Barkley injury really just kind of handicapped them severely for the rest of this season. And that defense, it almost allowed the Washington football team to come back, and if they had made the PAT afterwards instead of going for 2, they might have let something up in overtime. Who knows? But right now, looking where the Eagles are at, I do think their offense, we have seen it score a lot of points. They have kept it close with some teams that, in my opinion, are better than the Giants. So I think it will be a one-score game, but I do still think the Eagles win 27-20 and get that little boost up in their division. The Giants will fall to 1-6, probably. I guess they're going to be down in the bottom 2. And yeah, so let's go ahead and look at the next one. Saints versus Panthers. Got kind of an old Panthers logo over here. Only one I could really find. I hope you don't mind. Anyway, so the Saints, they're going to get Michael Thomas right now. He's just questionable, but I'm pretty sure he is. I don't think he's injured. I think the only reason he didn't play in the Chargers game 2 weeks back was because he had a little scuffle with another Saints player, but I have a feeling that's probably going to be settled now, especially now they're 3-2, and if they were 5-0, maybe they would keep him out for this one, but I doubt. It's been 3 weeks at this point. And the Panthers, on the other hand, despite the fact they lost last week, they have been having a pretty good past 4 games, really. They won 3 straight, and they it was only a 7-point loss against that really good Bears defense. Their defense did hold up. You're starting to see all the pieces click in that rookie field defense that the Panthers have there. So I do think they can keep it pretty close here, but also you have to look at the Panthers' offense. It is nowhere near as explosive as the Saints' offense can be. When you have Alvin Kamara, who we've especially seen this season, can be a receiving threat and is obviously a rushing threat. I think at one point he was I think at one point he had top 5 receiving yards. He's a running back, and if they get Michael Thomas back, I have a feeling the Saints are going to be able to have have a really good game on offense. I do think the Panthers can keep it close. I don't think it'll be too high scoring. Kind of the same deal as the Eagles-Giants game, 28-21. I do think the Saints will get the win here. A lot has to do with their offense. And they get the win. They move up to 4-2. The Panthers fall back to a losing record of 3-4, but I do think that they will probably at some point go back up to a winning or at least .500 record sometime in this season if they do lose this game, which there is a chance they'll win. Next, we have Jets versus Bills, one of the worst teams against a team that's had a rough past couple of games. Please ignore these numbers. I don't know what they are. It's hard to find a picture that'll actually fit in this little slot because a lot of pictures are either too long or too wide, or it's complicated. But the Jets, obviously, one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the league. Sam Darnold is still questionable, so there's still a chance that Joe Flacco will be a part of this game. Really, they're just kind of self-destructing here. It's like they're about to go into a really, really tough rebuild. Unless Sam Darnold is, unless they come out and say that Sam Darnold is going to play in this game, it really wouldn't help their chances. The Bills, on the other hand, They had a rough game 2 weeks ago against the Titans. Obviously, they got blew out 42-16. You look at last week, they lost to the Chiefs, but they only lost by 9 points, and their defense was really stout in that game. So I wouldn't really count them out too much from that last game. I do think, they kept it way closer against the Chiefs than I think most teams would. Looking at how bad the Jets are just such a terrible team. I'm gonna see a blowout here, 35-16, a 19-point loss for the Jets. When you're 0-7, I wouldn't be surprised to see them get knocked out of the playoffs pretty soon the way they're going. I do not think of a single team they could beat. You look at, even if you go my power rankings, I'm pretty sure second last I had the Jaguars in 31st. I could see the Jaguars beating the Jets. I don't think there's until Sam Darnold gets back, I don't think there's a game that I will pick the Jets to win. And on top of this, I'm making it my lock of the week. I just think, it's such a big win here by the Bills that I just can't not do it. It's such... I cannot see a situation when the Jets win. And, unless Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and half of their defense just is in a car crash or something, which, I don't hope to happen, obviously, but I don't see any situation in which the Jets win. They're just so bad. Next up, we have the Bengals going up against the Browns. Looking at the way they played last week, the Browns... they of course, I'm not gonna overreact from last week. They were going up against one of the best teams in the league, and they kind of had a rough game. But right now, you're going up against the Bengals, who, despite the fact they lost last week and they did let up a huge comeback, you look at the first half, they were playing really well. We're kind of starting to see the potential that this offense has for greatness here. And then you look at the Browns, they do have a really, really, really good offense. Obviously, even with Nick Chubb on IR, they still have Kareem Hunt, who, kind of like Alvin Kamara, is a receiving and rushing threat. Baker Mayfield, though, he's questionable, but I have a feeling he'll probably be in this week, so that's a boost. I know that Case Keenum had a better quarterback rating last week than Baker Mayfield did, but I do still strongly believe that Baker Mayfield is a much better quarterback than Case Keenum probably ever was. And looking at this defense, the Browns still do have a really good defense, despite the fact that they let the Steelers drop 38 points on them. I do have to stress again that the Steelers are one of the best teams in the league at this point. And looking at this, I just think that it'll be a pretty sizable win in the Browns' favor. The Bengals' offense, they need to give Joe Burrow some type of help. He seems to be out there working all by himself. I think the Browns will get the win here, 28-17. Not a blowout, but also not very close. I think the Browns, I think a lot of people are starting to say, oh, Baker Mayfield is holding back the Browns. Oh, they're not, contenders anymore after they lost one game pretty badly. Of course, week one they also lost pretty badly, and you see what they did after that. They obviously are pretty good at bouncing back, and I think they're going to come out here, get a win, go up to 5-2, and stay in the thick of things in the AFC. Coming next, we have Washington versus the Cowboys. I think this one, you see, if you go on different websites, different, prediction sites, whatever, you see a lot of different things, line-wise. A lot of places say, the line is Washington by 3. A lot of places say it's a pick-em. A lot of people say Cowboys by 5. It's really anybody's game, especially after watching that Monday night game when the Cowboys just played horrendously. But Washington, they're kind of getting a break here. They go into Washington. This is definitely a very winnable game here. They can definitely come in here, get a win, and be boosted in the fight for the division. But also looking at Washington, that offense did look it looked pretty good last week. I know that they lost and they only scored 19 points. But still, they did have some good plays. It was a lot of bad decision making. There'd be an open, Terry McLaurin or something. Kyle Allen just wouldn't hit him for some reason. That's something they can work on. That's something they can look at film, and that's something they can fix. And that is definitely something that they can improve on. And then also their defense did only allow the Giants to get 20 points, and 7 of those points came from an offensive turnover. Kyle Allen fumbled the ball, and they recovered it for a touchdown. So really, the defense only let up 13 points, which is pretty impressive against any team. Even the Jets, if you only allow a team to let up 13 points, which is less than 2 touchdowns, that's only 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good. I think it'll be a pretty even matchup here, but you just have to look at this Washington defense. I know they haven't necessarily shown. They definitely. in the last 5 games, their defense hasn't looked nowhere near as good as it was in week 1, but also you have to look at Kendall Fuller they have on there. Chase Young is still a force. I think they'll be able to hold back this weekend Cowboys offense. We're seeing that, this not going to work. Andy Dalton hasn't been playing too well. He's pretty interception thrown prone, sorry. And then you also have to look at Ezekiel Elliott. He really couldn't get going last week. So I think Washington defense will do really well in this offense. I mean, the Cowboys also have one of the worst defenses. I think it'll be a very, very close game, but I'm going to take the upset here, actually. I am going to have Washington, if it ever shows. It goes straight to the Packers, of course. Let's move back. So 23-21 Washington on top here. They will move up to 2-5. Really is not a good thing because they really just need to tank. Same with the Giants, really. They just really need to tank. They need to try to get some. I mean, especially with the Jets down there. The Jets are in prime position. At this point in the season, when you have no wins, there's really no point in winning. So the Jets are in prime position to take that number 1 seed. So the Washington really just needs to keep on losing. But no, they move to 2-5. Now let's go to the Texans, Packers, and the Packers show up. Sorry about the little goof there. I clicked twice, and sometimes that ruins everything. In this game, you have the Texans, who, despite the fact they lost again, they did take the Titans into overtime. They have looked much better these past 2 weeks than they did in the first 4. I expect that to carry over into this week. They are a pretty talented team. It may have just been Bill O'Brien holding them back. And then you look at the Packers, who they lost last week 38-10 to the Buccaneers. Terrible loss there. They were up 10-0 into the first quarter, and they just completely collapsed in the second quarter, let up 28 points and didn't score another point for the rest of this game. And you have to wonder, is that going to carry over? But I have a feeling it's not because, you have like a veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. He's used to these kind of situations. He's had big blowout losses. I have a feeling, he's going to, people talk about how, mad he is at people, saying he's bad. A lot of people, again, I talk about this a lot of people are overreacting way too much. I have a feeling Aaron Rodgers is going to come out here firing like crazy, and I think they're going to get the win here, 31-27. It's going to be pretty close, but I do think the Packers get back into that win column, knock the Texans back down, well, not back down, but knock the Texans down to 1-6. They move up to 5-1. Depending on how the Bears do, they could possibly get back on top of this division. Moving on to the next game, we're going to be talking about Falcons versus Lions. In my opinion, the Falcons, they had an amazing win last week, 40-23. It was really even more a blowout than the score was. It was, a complete demolition of the Vikings. They just picked them apart at every part of the ball. They were just, and then you look at you're starting to see this offense kind of take off with, obviously Todd Gurley having a great year, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley being pretty good wide receiver threats. But you also have to look at the Lions, who they're pretty underrated in my opinion. They're 2-3. They've kept it close with some pretty good teams. Obviously, they beat the Cardinals, who especially we saw last week are one of the best teams in the league. And then you look, they kept it close with the Saints. I feel like I talk about it a lot, but the Lions are highly underrated. And look at the Falcons' defense. It is, in my opinion, I don't think it's very good. And that Falcons' offense has been pretty, off and on throughout the season. I think it'll be a pretty close game. But I'm actually surprisingly going to put the upset here. Lions win 31-28. A lot of people are probably going to be mad about this, but I just really trust in this offense. I do think that, I'm not, don't come at me. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm a Washington fan. Which I guess you could see that. I guess you could say that game was a little biased. I don't think it was. I pick them to lose all the time. Come on. But anyways, the Lions, I think they will take the dub here, 31-28. A big upset in my opinion, but I think that they will be able to get the job done. Coming up next, see, I didn't double click there. I was about to. We have Titans versus Steelers. A battle of undefeated teams. I did not expect it to be that. Early in the season, I thought that both of these teams would be 3-3, 4-2 maybe coming in at this point. But no, both of these teams are 5-0. They're looking good. It's crazy to think that coming out of this game, we're still going to have 2 undefeated teams. Well, depending on, if this game ties, then I guess we could have 1, and I guess if the Seahawks lose. But it's whatever, you know what I mean. It's just crazy to think. Anytime a team is 6-0 or something, they are pretty good, and I did not expect either of these teams to be like that. Both blowing by my expectations. Let's talk about it. The Steelers have one of the best defenses in the league, creeping up there to maybe the best. We've seen them. Obviously, you saw last week they completely demolished that Browns offense. The Browns just could not get anything going. They only allowed 7 points. The Titans, on the other hand, they were able to go out there. They allowed 36 points to a weakened Texans offense, but they still managed to get the win. That offense is proving to be really, really effective here. So I think it'll be a really close game. You have a really good offense against a really good defense. And I think a lot of it will come down to the fact that I think the Titans' defense is not as good as the Steelers' defense. And also the Steelers' offense is really good. So I think that the Steelers will be able to score more points than the Titans. And in the end, that's what matters. So I think the Steelers win. A pretty close game here, 35-31. And the Steelers stay undefeated at 6-0. And yeah, the Titans, they lose one, and they'll be 5-1. I'm sure they'll be fine. At 5-1. I think they'll still be first in the AFC South. I'm not sure. Anyways, let's move on to the next game we're going to be talking about, which is Cardinals versus Seahawks. Another undefeated team in the Seahawks going up against a tough opponent in the Cardinals. The Cardinals, when they're playing their best, the Cardinals are one of the best teams. When they're playing at their worst, they're kind of meh. I mean, obviously, you can say the same with every team, but when we've seen them, again, I keep on mentioning it, but last week we have seen the Cardinals take off and play really, really good games. And then we have also seen games like against the Lions, wherever they had a pretty tough game. And I think coming into this game, I think they will play pretty well, and I think it could be pretty close. And then you also have to look at that Seahawks team, which is just so stacked. They have one of the best secondaries, in my opinion. I think it's really underrated. I think a lot of people don't notice that, the Seahawks secondary is actually pretty elite, in my opinion. And their offense, obviously, is such high score. I mean, you don't even have to mention it, but Russell Wilson, he has been cooking all year. He has been insane, one of the best players in the league, MVP candidate number 1, in my opinion. It was kind of like a sad note, but should I do a video like half season or like mid season or postseason talking about who I think will get an award? I never did one preseason, but I was wondering, should I do one postseason? Speaking of the Cardinals offense, speaking of offense, Kenyon Drake actually broke out last week with 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a really, really good game. So I think this could be a close one, but I think it'll all come down to the fact that Seahawks defense is so stout, and Kyler Murray didn't have the best game last week. He had 188 yards on only 9 completions. He had 9 completions for 24 attempts, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns. But still, I had to look at that and say he wasn't being as accurate as possible. But still, I do think that the Seahawks will actually get the win here, 35-27. The Cardinals keep it within 1, but I do think that Seahawks will be able to stay undefeated along with the Steelers. And I think they will maintain their spot at the top of the NFC West, where I think they should be at the end of this season. But we'll see if anything changes. All right, let's flip over here. Next game we're going to be talking about is Broncos versus Chiefs. The Broncos got Drew Lock back, and they beat the Patriots. The Patriots, their offense really did not play too well. Looking at the Broncos defense really limited the Patriots offense to only 12 points. Also, you have to look at the Broncos offense, just field goals. 6 field goals, but still just field goals. They scored 18 points. It was all on their defense. And you look at this Chiefs team, which has possibly the best offense in sports right now. Travis Kelce, you have Tyreek Hill, Patrick. I could just name players for days that are just so good on the Chiefs offense. I think that even the Broncos' pretty good defense won't be able to stop them. So I think that, also look at the Broncos offense again, only scored 18 points. I think the Chiefs will definitely be able to, not necessarily, it'll be a blowout. 35-21 is a pretty big blowout, but I do think that the Broncos do score more than 20 points. Not a terrible game, but still they did lose by a pretty big margin. The Chiefs will go up to 6-1. The Broncos drop to, I think, 2-4. I'm not really sure. Next up, we have the Chargers versus Jaguars. The Jaguars, those first 2 games are now officially a fluke. They have a pretty tough past 4 games. The Chargers, meanwhile, somehow have ended up at 1-4, even though they've had a really good. I think all 4 of their losses, maybe other than the one against the Panthers, were better than their win against the Bengals at the beginning of the season. But look at the Chargers. Justin Herbert has been having a absolute monster of a year. He came out. I don't think he was told he was going to be starting until literally, I think, maybe 2 hours before his game against the Chiefs, and he went out there and he did a really good performance. He actually made the Chiefs come back against him, and he actually took the Chiefs into overtime, which is really good for a first start after only being told 2 hours beforehand that he was going to play, and he has continued to that. He hasn't really had an off game yet. I'm not going to expect that he has one here. Jaguars, just not good enough in my opinion. The Chargers get the win here, 31-17. Jaguars, Minshew magic is just not there. I'm sorry. I don't know how many ways I can say this, but it was beginning of the season this year and the beginning of the season last year. We saw little glimpses of what he could be, but he is just not going to be it. Y'all got to be looking for some kind of quarterback help. All right, coming up next, we are going to be talking about the Patriots versus the 49ers. 49ers, they managed to get a good divisional win last week against the Rams, kind of shutting off all the haters that were kind of getting at Jimmy G after that terrible loss against the Dolphins. They showed, hey, it was an off game. We're still in this thing. Patriots, meanwhile, their offense did not play too well, especially Cam Newton. I think he had no touchdowns and an interception for only like 120 yards, by far his worst game in these past, well, definitely the worst game of this season, in my opinion. The Patriots have a losing record. They're 2-3. Wow. But I think their defense is still really elite. I think they still have one of the best defenses in the league, and I think, we've seen Cam Newton play with a chip on his shoulder. I think he'll be able to come out here and play really well. I think he'll keep it close against the 49ers, and the 49ers, I think that their offense is just so good that I think that they will be able to score lots of points against this Patriots defense. I think it'll be a really, really close matchup. I like it here. But looking at how good this Patriots is, I don't think the Patriots will need to score too many points, but I think they'll be able to win here 26-24. So yeah, the Patriots get the win. They go back up to .500, 3-3. Probably, I think they might go back up to second since the Dolphins have a bye week this week. It's crazy to think that at this point the Dolphins are second in the AFC East, and in my opinion, they're looking really, really good. I did not expect that. And the 49ers, they're gonna fall. I think they're gonna be down 3-4 at this point. They'll have a losing record. They're fourth in the NFC West. A bit of a Super Bowl hangover here. We'll see what they can do. They have a really, really tough schedule upcoming. We'll see maybe if they can win like half of the games they have these next 5 or 6 weeks. That'll show a lot about them. But if they lose a lot, that'll also show, hey, maybe last year was a one-hit wonder. Next, we're going to be talking about is the Sunday night matchup between the Raiders and the Buccaneers. If you had told me preseason that this would be a really good game, I would have smacked you across the face and told you were a liar, because I wasn't very high on the Raiders before the season, and now I am seeing that I was completely wrong. They're 3-2, which isn't that impressive of a record until you realize the teams that they've beaten. Like, they beat the Saints, obviously. They beat the Chiefs. And then they had a bye week, and they had weeks to prepare against the Buccaneers, who, they had a really good game there against the Packers. So, the Buccaneers are obviously a really, really good team, but I think the Raiders, their offense we've seen is just so explosive. But the one question I have is on the defense. I don't know if I really trust it that much. This offense is insane, but I don't know if their defense will be able to keep up. And seeing what the Buccaneers did against, the Packers defense isn't very bad, but it's also not very good. I think I'd say the Packers defense is slightly above average, and you saw what the Buccaneers did against that. I think the Buccaneers will take advantage of this Raiders. Again, kind of the same deal as the Packers. It's not very bad. It's not very good. I think the Raiders' offense will be good enough to keep it close, but I do think it'll be a pretty high-scoring game here. 38-31, Buccaneers get the win. The Raiders have fallen down to .500, 3-3. They're still second in the AFC West. And looking at the rest of this division, I think the Chargers. I think they'll stay second. But right now, the Raiders, they really need to win a lot of games if they want to, compete for this division. And the Buccaneers, they'll get the win here. Pretty close game here. I can see it going either way. One more game to talk about, and then we'll be done. Next up, we have Rams versus Bears. It will be a Monday night game. Yeah, the Rams, who are 4-2, and the Bears, who are 5-1. Still cannot believe the Bears are very good. I thought they'd be kind of in the same situation as the 2019 Dolphins. I thought they would have a terrible year. I thought they would be 1-5 and 2-4 at this point, but no, they're out here 5-1, first in their division, which definitely I did not expect. Also look at the Rams; they're 4-2. They had a tough loss last week, but I think they'll bounce back this week. Don't worry. You look at this team; they still do have an absolutely amazing offense. I mean, Darrell Henderson has been having a monster year. Jared Goff obviously bouncing back. I mean, he had an off year last year. They still managed to go 9-7, but it's still a pretty off year. This year, he is managing to come back. That defense also very, very, very strong. We're seeing them limit a lot of the good teams. Offensive wise, you look at the Bears, their defense is a huge part of this team. Their offense hasn't necessarily been winning them lots of games, especially, I mean, you saw last week against the Panthers, they limited the Panthers to 16 points. They got 2 interceptions off of Teddy Bridgewater, who's basketball, which has actually been pretty accurate in my opinion. And you look at this, I mean, again, and then back against the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football, a lot of that had to do with their defense later in the game showing up in stopping Tom Brady from scoring any points, and their defense, I mean, their offense really didn't do too much. So in my opinion, looking at this game, I think it's a pretty, I mean, you're going up against a team like the Rams with such an amazing defense, and you're a very defensive team too. Pretty good matchup here, I could say, but I do think that the Rams defense will be able to hold the Bears, and I think the Rams will get the win 27-21, and they will be bumped up to 5-2. Still chasing the Seahawks in that division, but a win definitely doesn't hurt them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like football, if you like watching the NFL, we post this kind of stuff every single day. We're doing power rankings, we do predictions, we do weekly reactions, Thursday night reactions, Monday night reactions. Tomorrow you'll be able to see my Thursday night football reaction. I'll react to the game happening tonight. And then also I'm a Washington fan, so you get to see me react to the Washington game. So if you want to see what a fan of a horrible team